expects a scream. He expects the frantic chaos of a city whose walls have been breached. He expects the clanging of bells, the weeping of the fearful, and the desperate, disorganized shouting of men who know their doom has arrived. Imagine the scene. A fortress sits high upon a jagged ridge. Below, in the valley, a vast army has gathered. Their torches number in the thousands, like a sea of fire reflecting the hatred of hell itself. They beat their shields. They chant. They launch insults into the night air, mocking the king inside, mocking the provisions, mocking the very foundation of the stone. The enemy general rides to the front. He waits for the reaction. He waits to see the torches on the wall flicker in panic. He waits to hear the arguments, the pleas for mercy, the chaotic noise of a kingdom tearing itself apart from the inside. But from the fortress, there is nothing. Total, absolute silence. No arrows fly, no shouts return, just the heavy, rhythmic breathing of 1,000 men standing on the ramparts, shields locked, swords drawn, waiting in a stillness so profound it drowns out the roaring of the barbarian horde below. Do you know what happens to the enemy in that moment? Fear. Because noise is cheap, panic is common, bluster and bragging are the garments of the insecure. But silence implies a plan. Silence implies that the king on the throne is not pacing the floor wringing his hands, but is sitting comfortably, unmoved by the threats at the gate. There is a terrifying power in the man or woman who does not react when the world demands a reaction. There is a weight to the warrior who holds his tongue while others lose their minds. We live in an age of noise. The enemy of your soul, the accuser, is constantly screaming. He screams through your circumstances. He screams through the siege of anxiety. He screams through the insults of the past. He wants you to argue with him. He wants you to shout back at the storm. He wants to draw you out into the open field of debate and despair. But the will of a warrior is not found in the volume of his boast, but in the depths of his restraint. Today, we speak of a weapon that has been forgotten by the modern mind. We speak of the strategy of the ancient kings. We speak of the silence that shakes the enemy. History is written by the bold, but the bold are forged in silence. When we look to the great cloud of witnesses, those ancient captains of faith, we see that their greatest victories often began not with a battle cry, but with a hush. Consider the walls of Jericho. In the book of Joshua, chapter 6, we see a strategy that defies human logic. A fortified city, ancient and imposing. Its walls were thick enough for chariots to race upon. The inhabitants were warriors, giants of reputation. God's command to Joshua was not to build siege engines. It was not to batter down the gates with iron rams. The command was to walk, and not just to walk, but to walk in silence. Verse 10 says, "You shall not shout or make any noise with your voice, nor shall a word proceed out of your mouth, until the day I say to you, shout." Imagine the discipline required for this. 600,000 men of war, 6 days of marching. Can you hear the sound of that silence? The rhythmic thud of 1,000,000 boots hitting the dust, the creak of leather armor, the metallic shimmer of drawn swords. But not one word, not one whisper of complaint, not one shout of bravado. Inside Jericho, the terror must have been suffocating. If Israel had shouted, Jericho would have understood. This is war. But this silence, this was judgment. This was the inevitable march of God. By holding their tongues, the warriors of Israel were storing up a kinetic energy that, when finally released on the seventh day, would shatter stone and mortar. Their silence was the winding of the catapult. Look to Hezekiah, the king of Judah. In 2 Kings, chapter 18, the Assyrian Empire has come to collect. The Rabshakeh, the mouthpiece of the enemy, stands by the aqueduct and spews venom. He he mocks their faith. He lists the nations he has burned to the ground. He questions the very character of God. It is a torrent of verbal filth designed to induce surrender. And what is the command from the king? Verse 36 tells us, "But the people held their peace and answered him not a word, for the king's commandment was, do not answer him." Do not answer him. Do not validate his lies with a response. Do not let him drag you into a negotiation for your own slavery. Hezekiah took that silence and went into the temple of the Lord, and he spread the enemy's letter before God. He let God be the response. And because Hezekiah stayed silent before the enemy and cried out only to God, the angel of the Lord went out that night and struck down 185,000 Assyrians. Consider Nehemiah, a cupbearer turned builder. When he arrived in Jerusalem, the city was a ruin, a skeleton of its former glory. He did not announce his arrival with trumpets. He did not hold a press conference in the rubble. Nehemiah chapter 2 says he went out by night, in the dark, in the silence. He inspected the broken walls while the critics slept. When Sanballat and Tobiah, the enemies of the work, began to jeer and distract, asking him to come down and talk, Nehemiah did not engage in a debate. He simply kept working. His trowel scraping against the stone was the only answer they deserved. And finally, look to Elijah. In 1 Kings chapter 19, the prophet is weary. He is hiding in a cave. A great and strong wind tore into the mountains, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still small voice. Some translations call it a sound of sheer silence. It was in the quiet that the marching orders came. It was in the quiet that the strength returned. The noise of the world drains you. The silence of the presence of God refills you. These men knew a secret. The Lion of Judah does not need to bark at every dog that snaps at his heels. Now, we must enter the forge. We must understand how this silence is crafted, for it does not come naturally to us. By nature, we are reactive creatures. We are impulsive. When we are hit, we want to hit back. When we are insulted, we want to defend. To learn silence is to learn the discipline of the anvil. Picture the blacksmith's shop. It is a place of intense heat and crushing weight. The metal, that is you, is thrust into the coals until it glows white hot. This is the season of trial. This is the pressure. And then, it is pulled out and placed upon the anvil. The hammer falls. Clang. The hammer falls again. Clang. The metal does not scream at the hammer. It does not debate with the blacksmith. If the metal were to wriggle, to twist, to try and escape the blow, it would be ruined. It would become a useless scrap, fit only to be cast aside. No, the strength of the blade is determined by its ability to endure the strike without moving. This is what the scripture means in Isaiah 30, verse 15. In quietness and confidence shall be your strength. The quietness is not passivity, it is focus. It is the metal yielding to the master's hand. Every time you keep your mouth shut when your flesh wants to scream, the blacksmith is folding the steel. He is adding another layer of durability. Every time you choose prayer over panic, the blacksmith is tempering the edge. In Zechariah chapter 13, verse 9, God declares, I will bring the 1/3 through the fire, will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. Have you ever watched gold being refined? The refiner sits over the pot. The fire burns hot underneath. As the heat rises, the impurities, the dross, float to the surface. This dross is the noise of your life. It is the doubt, the fear, the ego, the need for validation. The refiner skims it off. He skims it off until the surface is so still, so clear that he can see his own reflection in the gold. That is the goal, that the master can see his face in you. But that reflection is only possible in the stillness. If the gold is boiling and churning with impurities, the image is distorted. If you are churning with the need to prove yourself to your enemies, you cannot reflect the image of your king. The enemy wants to keep you in the noise because he knows that in the silence, you find your sword. He knows that a warrior who talks less observes more. He knows that a man who listens to God cannot be deceived by the devil. The forge is painful, yes. The silence of the suffering is heavy. But let the hammer fall. Let the fire burn. You are not being destroyed. You are being sharpened. Now, how do we carry this blade into the battle? How do we apply the ancient strategy of silence to the wars we fight today? Your battlefield may not be a valley in Judea, but the siege is just as real. Anxiety is a siege engine set up at the gates of your mind. It launches fiery arrows of what if, and you aren't enough, over your walls day and night. Most men open the gates and try to fight anxiety hand to hand in the open field. They argue with it. They obsess over it. They give it a voice. Stop answering the door. Use the weapon of silence. When the thought comes, do not engage it. Like Hezekiah, spread it out before the Lord and then get back to your post. Anxiety feeds on attention. Starve it. Turn your back on the shouting and look to the captain of the host. Lust is the traitor whispering in the shadows of the barracks. It promises comfort. It promises relief. It tries to seduce you into lowering your shield. You cannot reason with lust. You cannot negotiate a peace treaty with it. You must silence it with action. The ancient monks had a saying, "Go into your cell, and your cell will teach you everything." In other words, sit in the silence of discipline until the traitor flees. Do not entertain the conversation. Cut the throat of the temptation with the silence of obedience. Offense and bitterness are the fog of war. Someone disrespects you. Someone betrays you. The fog rolls in, blinding you, making you swing wildly at phantom enemies. You want to set the record straight. You want to write the manifesto of your innocence. Hold your peace. The greatest retaliation against an enemy is to become more successful, more holy, and more focused than they could ever imagine. While they gossip, you build. While they slander, you pray. While they make noise, you make progress. Your silence is a mirror. When you refuse to roll in the mud with them, the only dirt they see is the filth on their own hands. Exodus 14, verse 14. Memorize this. Burn it onto the shield of your heart. The Lord will fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. That is the deal. That is the covenant. If you fight for yourself, God will let you lose. But if you hold your peace, if you maintain the disciplined formation of silence, the Creator of the universe draws his sword on your behalf. We cannot speak of silence without looking to the ultimate warrior, the King of Kings, Jesus Christ. Isaiah prophesied of him in chapter 53, verse 7. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. See him standing before Pilate. The Roman governor holds the power of life and death, or so he thinks. The religious leaders are screaming lies. The mob is roaring for blood. The atmosphere is thick with demonic chaos. And there stands Jesus, beaten, bloody, majestic. Pilate asks, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" And the scripture says, "He answered him not one word, so that the governor marveled greatly." Why? Why did he not call down fire? Why did he not summon the 12 legions of angels that stood ready at the edge of heaven, hands on their hilts, waiting for the whisper of command? Because he knew the mission. He knew that his silence was purchasing our redemption. He knew that to win the war for humanity, he had to endure the shame of the moment. His silence was not weakness. It was strength under absolute control. It was the dam holding back the ocean. And because he endured the silence of the cross, because he endured the silence of the tomb for 3 dark days, he earned the right to shout on the morning of the resurrection. The stone rolled away not just to let him out, but to let the roar of victory out into the world. Hebrews 12 verse 2 says, "He endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God." He sat down. The work is done. The victory is secured. And because he sits, you can stand. So, warrior, what is your creed? How will you face the noise of this coming week? Let this be your declaration. I will not be shaken by the threats of the enemy. I will not trade my peace for panic. I am a watchman on the wall, and I will not abandon my post to argue with fools. My silence is my shield. My trust is my spear. I do not need to shout to prove my authority, for I serve the King who commands the storm to be still. Let the world rage. Let the heathen imagine a vain thing. I will be still. I will know that he is God. And when the time comes to move, I will move with the force of a flood. If this message has sharpened your blade, if it has added fuel to your fire, then stand with us. Like this video. Share it with a brother who is under siege. Subscribe to the channel. Join the Legion. This is Roar of Zion, where faith meets fire and warriors are born.